Lessons not learned and missed opportunities. As a part of our series, The State of Population and Development, #Population and Development. This session is organized by IMPRI, Center for Human Dignity and Development, IMPRI, New Delhi. As the moderator of the session and series, we have Dr. Devender Singh, Global Studies Program, University of Freiburg, Germany, and visiting senior fellow at IMPRI. And the esteemed panelists are Professor R. B. Bhagat, Professor and Head Department of Migration and Urban Studies, International Institute for Population Sciences, Mumbai, and Professor Arun Kumar, Distinguished Economist, former Professor JNU, and Malcolm S. Adisacia, Chair Professor, Institute of Social Sciences, New Delhi. Ms. Akriti Bhatia, Founder, People's Association in Grassroots Action and Movement. Mr. Sandeep Chachra, Executive Director, Action Aid Association, India. And lastly, Professor S. Irudaya Rajan, Chairman, International Institute of Migration and Development, former Professor, Center for Development Studies, Kerala. Now I would like to invite our moderator, Dr. Devender Singh, to initiate the deliberation with his opening remarks and to invite our distinguished speakers and proceed further. We look forward to learning from the esteemed gathering. Thank you. Without further ado, I would request Dr. Devender Singh to begin. Over to you, sir. Sir, you are on mute.
Thank you very much, Anchal. I'll just share my screen to make some introductory remark, just to set the tone of the discussion. So as we heard, Anchal, we are here to discuss the great march of migrants during the national lockdown, lessons not learned, and missed opportunities. So when the pandemic started, it was an atmosphere of fear and panic. And then there was an announcement of the lockdown, which also precipitated the fear and the panic among the population. And it was claimed that it will be over within 20 days or so. But the situation did not improve, and the lockdown was again extended. And when the lockdown was extended again and again, then migrants started in droves from almost all places to reach their homes. They abandoned their residences, their belongings, their jobs, and their hopes and promises of a better future in an alien place. And I'm using the word alien because that was the sense the migrants were getting at that time, because of the fear, because of the treatment they were getting from their landlords or the employers and general population. They walked hundreds of miles, some of them even walking thousands of miles, braving the elements of nature, indignities faced during the journey by the police or by other local people, and the policing by transporters, the old, sick, children, pregnant women, everybody, whatever they could carry on their body, on their head, they left for their homes. All this planning, moving, going out, they did on their own. There was no support available during that time. The support was coming from the other migrants groups, from their friends and relatives. There are some instances where help also came from either the landlord or even the employers, like the initial money was given, or in some cases transportation was also, but mostly in most cases it was the migrants who were planning and taking this journey on their own. When it became a big issue, then trains and buses were also started by some of the state governments. And during this journey, hundreds of them died. So we can say that migrants walking during the lockdown was the defining image of the first wave of COVID-19. India awoke to migrant issues. I don't know whether it was for the first time also, but the way it was discussed oh my God, there are so many migrants, why they are leaving, where they are going, how they are moving. So the images of migrants that struck the Indian populace. There was media coverage, social media discussions were taking places, and government and policy makers also took notes and made announcement, this will be done and that will be done. But then it was all but forgotten. It was a great opportunity, in my opinion, to learn about migrants, their life in the destination, their living in working conditions. For example, the Prime Minister made an announcement that the landlords and employers should take care of the migrant workers. So, but that did not happen. So, did we have that kind of understanding in what conditions they live and what kind of relationship they have with the local population or with the landlords? We had the opportunity to know their numbers and major routes. I say this because we are never sure how many migrants are actually there in the country. Different experts, different data sources put different numbers. Even experts don't agree what is the actual number of migrants, internal migrants, total number of migrants, interstate migrants, informal sector worker migrants. So this was a great opportunity. We could have put some system in place for data gathering and use, because why I'm saying that when people started moving, there was a system put in place where we were able to count that through special Shramik trains, 6 million migrants moved, and through buses, 4 million migrants moved. So we could have used this opportunity to have some sort of or some permanent system of data gathering and use in place, and also to design programs and formulate policies so that this kind of situation does not recur in future. So and I've kept the topics of the discussion very broad, just to discuss that what did we learn from this overall time in our history, and what did we do? What was our response at different levels of the society? And then to distill out what are the key issues regarding migration and migrants. And at this stage, what needs to be done? So these are 3-4 issues, and panelists are more than welcome to add their views, as well as if they want to broaden the envelope of the discussion by bringing in more issues, our point of view, they want to discuss. And I'll just stop sharing my presentation now, and I'll invite Professor Bhagat to share his views around these 4 or 5 topics which I have raised. But also I would like to request him to reflect on these issues in the backdrop of the different studies they have undertaken with the migrants during the pandemic.
Yes. So thank you, Dr. Singh. And thank you, Arjun IMPRI, for conducting this discussion today. Today is International Migrants Day. And I congratulate you for organizing this this discussion. As Dr. Singh has rightly said, that we have seen the scene during the lockdown, and I did not repeat all these things. First, I will start with some of the positive things. And these positive things are, for example, One Nation, One Ration card that has been announced, that is portability of social security programs, and one important was the ration card. How much progress has been done, but there was good intention, and we have to see this could be done effectively. Second was that rental housing. I'm not aware that much progress has been done on this, but yes, this was announced. Then we have e-Shram portal. E-Shram portal, where the migrants, all informal sector workers, not only migrants, are registered. And today morning I was looking at e-Shram portal, around 28 crore informal sector workers have registered. Now, we can't make out the migrants. That is the issue. It is informal sector. They are self-employed. They are destination-based. They may be moving from origin to destination. So this is the larger issue that yes, informal sector is important and government is serious to do something for the informal sector, and we have a portal. But how this portal is helping, I think I don't have idea on this. And but I see there is a great potential in this for advancing understanding of migration and migrant. At the same time, at policy level, there were 2-3 things happening. One was that skill development, skill mapping, that's right, good thing. And Ministry of Skill Development was doing a lot of things. Other was, of course, portability of Social Security program. That is recognized and some headway has been made, but still we have to see in many fronts, including health security program. But one very important thing was that registration of migrants and tracking of the migrants. So where I think nobody questions why migrants need to be tracked. So it is understood that migrants are vulnerable and they are seasonal, temporary and circulatory migrants, and they need to be tracked. But then the question is tracking. Will this help the problem? Or it is the access to food, education of their children and health services at the destination that matters. So suppose we are tracking the migrants, and also migrants are entitled to get ration under one nation, one ration card at the place of destination. But then if ration shop keeper is not friendly, or similarly, the various functionaries are not friendly, because then I think these type of programs cannot be realized, cannot be achieved. So there are larger issues, and I think tracking is something that cannot solve the problem. So there is something like technological solution in the government sector, among the policymaker. Oh, technology can solve the problem. And therefore, here is the problem. We see migrants as an individual, and we see in an instrumental way and try to solve the problem. When we look at migration and migrant, there is a larger issue. How we identify them, how we understand them, how we study them. Now you will be, I think, surprised to know we never ask a question, are you a migrant? So we will never ask. So what question we are asking in census and NSSO, where you are born? Or what was your place of last residence, where you usually resided last time and now you came to this place? And therefore, migration means what? Migration is a place identity. And migration is something we recognize that it is an identity. It is not an individual migrant. It is something which has sociological, political character, and it is an identity, place-based identity, and how it intersects with other identities, including economic vulnerability, poverty, etc., and other social identities. Because if you see who are migrating, particularly seasonal, temporary type of migrants, they are largely scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and lower sections of the society, poor people who are migrating seasonally, temporarily, circulate migration. So therefore, this place-based identity need to be recognized. And this is, I think I say that we academics have failed. And this is epistemic failure. Now, epistemic failure is very fundamental failure, because the way we produce knowledge is very important, because it generates our consciousness. Now, Dr. Singh was saying that why we have forgotten. Yes, we have forgotten because this is not important. Place-based identity is not important. Now, what is that epistemologically place-based identity refers to? It refers to the question of where. So we are so much concerned about why, how in our statistical understanding, that question of where is not important. And therefore, if where is question is not important, it will be forgotten. it will not be highlighted. So very instrumental way of looking migration research, migration policy making, because we are not able to address the question of where. Where is important because who gets what and where is important. Who gets what is not enough. Who gets what and where they are getting. And in that context, migration issue raises, and it is deeply connected with development process, highlighting the structure of how our spaces and places are being shaped and transformed. And that determines who gets what and where. In that context, rural-urban divide, nature of urbanization. People are living in big city or small city or very micro-level cities. Now, city structure, city hierarchy, and the location of people matters. And therefore, migration, when I raise the question of where and identity, it is about the relationship between place and people. How people shaping places and how this relationship is evolving. And in this context, some people are not included and excluded based on place-based identity. I think this type of epistemic failure, that also is responsible why we forget sometimes, because it is theoretically not well grounded. So this we are raising, this need to be raised. This again reflects in our policy and program, because space, place, and question of where is missing. So if you see policy and programs are highly fragmented, very sectoral, and how to bring all these in an integrated way, the convergence, when we bring the question of where, the space and place, and we see the area of origin, area of destination. So migration connects different places, transforms different places, origin, what is happening in the origin, what is happening in the destination. And therefore, migration policy is not for only migrants, but it is for their family also, those who are left behind, or they are those who are moving along with them. So we have to have, I think, three-pronged strategy. Strategy at the place of destination, where one nation, one ration card, portability of social security programs, health security programs, all these will matter. And housing also. Housing is very important. But at the same time, at the area of origin also, there should be programs of integrating migrants' household, left behind people, and also the remittances they are sending, the financial inclusion and other things, an integrated way, a convergence and integration, and which can aim to have rural development, strategy of rural development, integrating migration. So you don't find migration in our rural development strategy only when Manrega comes, then there is a question of migration. Why not? Migration issue can be dealt in Swachh Bharat, in right to education, right to health, and ICDS program. And we have seen during the pandemic that different state government has responded differently, and they have tried to incorporate certain things. For example, in Jharkhand, the government has created a cell in the Ministry of Labor, and a helpline has been created and trying to help those migrant workers outside. Now in Maharashtra, it is Ministry of Women and Child Development. They are taking lead because they think that migration, internal migration, particularly within Maharashtra, disrupting the services of immunization, access to healthcare, and ICDS program. These are being disrupted, and therefore women and child development. So the point is that migration is not simply a labor issue. Migration is a development issue. It is about space and place, and not it is an instrumental and technocratic way of solving and tracking the migrant and solve the problem, which is larger issue of sustainability and mainstreaming migration in the development process. Mainstreaming of migration at both in the area of origin and area of destination, and mainstreaming in all sectors. So it is not exclusively labor sector, labor department, but with health, with education, because children are getting affected, right to education is violated. So all these, I think, needs, and that requires a type of planning and decentralization, and looking at integration from the point of view of space and place. So I think before I end, let me remember today, on the day of International Migrants Day, our father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi. Why I want to remember him? Because we never see, we see migration is very small in nature. But when we look at how things have evolved historically, our political system, our social structure, our economy has been shaped, I think very important to remember our father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, who fought for migrants' rights in South Africa. He went there and fought for 20 years and experimented satyagraha and the tools of non-violence there. And after experimenting those methods, he implemented in India. So migration issues are not small. It's a struggle, it's a larger struggle of social political transformation. And technocratic solutions, instrumental solution will be short term, but long term, we have to have a strategy which is which can be well conceived within sustainable development, which says leave no one behind. So I will end here. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Bhagat. Now I would like to invite Professor Kumar. He joined us. He has extensively commented on the pandemic, migrant issue, and other issues also, and also the response of the government. Professor Arun Kumar.
Thank you very much for inviting me to give this brief talk. The first question that I'd like to pose is, why is there migration? Is it necessary? Of course, we know that people migrate, but what we are specifically referring to is the migration from rural to urban areas, and then they migrating back. And I think this migration issue from rural to urban areas is a problem of a crisis of agriculture, where there is a large issue of poverty and of unemployment. There is mechanization going on in agriculture, which is resulting in people being displaced. So employment elasticity in agriculture has been next to zero for now close to more than 20 years. So people are stuck in agriculture, and that aggravates poverty in rural areas, because the family has to then support more people on the small income that they can earn. And in agriculture, as we know, 85% of the farms are below 5 acres in size. And therefore, their incomes tend to be rather low. Unemployment in India is huge. We have produced a report on unemployment on October 11th, it was released. And we have shown that 304 million people have proper work, but 278 million do not have proper work. And we've categorized unemployment in the country in 4 categories. They are those who've stopped looking for work because they're not looking, because the labor force participation rate in India is very low compared to other comparable countries. Even compared to our labor force participation rate in 1991, it is much lower. So even if we assume that, what was the labor force participation rate in 1991 should have been what it should be now, then about 190 million people have left the labor force. They're not looking for work. Then there are the open unemployment, those who are counted in the labor force participation, but they do not find work. So they're looking for work, but not finding work. That's open unemployment. Then we have what we call underemployment. The data from this labor force data that's coming shows that 16% have less than 36 hours per week, and 8% have less than 24 hours per week of work. So these are the underemployed in the system. So like this, there are the disguised unemployed, the underemployed, those who've stopped looking for work, and so on. And these total about 278 million people. So the problem arises because people then are forced to migrate to look for work, to look for supporting the family income. And we are here referring to people who migrated within the country. Of course, it also means people have migrated abroad. Those who can afford to do that from Punjab and other areas, Kerala, etc., they migrated abroad as well, and they send income from there to support the families. But here we are predominantly looking at those who migrated within the country. And these are the people who then, during the pandemic, started migrating back, because these people have very low incomes. They have hardly any saving. And I think the Azim Premji study has shown that 90% of these workers said that they don't have savings to buy even 1 week of supplies. So these migrants to urban areas, they earn every day and spend every day. So without savings, it's very difficult to continue life in an urban area. And they hope that, if they went back to the rural areas, they'd at least be able to get food from the fields. So they migrated back. So in a sense, what's happened is that there is a problem of inequality and of development paradigm. Is the development paradigm of the economy, which has resulted in this kind of a skewed pattern of development, where the rural areas have suffered enormously, the urban areas have generated jobs. And the reason why this is happening is that there is a process by which we have followed the trickle-down policies. That is, the organized sector gets most of the investment. The unorganized sector gets very little investment. So I did a study sometime in 2008, where I found that 80% of all investment goes into the organized sector, where only 6% of the workers are working, whereas for the 94% of the workers, there is only 20% investment. And in agriculture, where at that time about 50% of the workforce was, they're getting only 5% of the investment. So for 50% of the workers, you're getting 5% investment. For 6% of the workers, you're getting 80% of the investment. So this skewed investment pattern implies that in the organized sector, there's mechanization, and therefore jobs are not being generated. And in agriculture also, there's very little investment. That's the one reason why jobs are not being generated. The other is that there's mechanization going on in agriculture as well. So there's labor displacement because of more use of tractors, harvester combines, and threshers, and so on. So therefore, in agriculture also, the employment generation is very little. So this is what has resulted in inequality between the organized and the unorganized sector, and as was being pointed out by Professor Bhagat, between the urban and the rural areas. So there are a variety of inequalities that are being created, but the more important thing is that poverty gets entrenched in the rural areas, especially in agriculture, and non-agriculture job creation in rural areas is also very weak. So the farmers who want to quit, who are on the farms, they are unable to leave. Now, this process has been aggravated post-1991 because the policies being followed post-1991 are what I call marketization policies. Markets have always existed, but marketization implies the penetration of the market philosophy into every social institution. So as Samuelson said, markets work on the principle of dollar vote. So if I have $1, I have one vote. If you have $1 million, you have 1 million votes. So in other words, markets are determined by purchasing power. Those who have the larger purchasing power, they are able to determine. So our policies, therefore, are marginalizing the marginal. Those who have lesser income, they get marginalized in the market. And therefore, the problem that we face is that post-1991, this inequality has grown even more rapidly than what it was growing earlier. As I said, we have been following trickle-down policies, but the trickle-down has become even sharper post-1991 because of the marketization process. There is also the consumer sovereignty idea, and also the idea that we are all profit maximizing individuals. That's supposed to be a rational individual. So all these things result in greater marginalization of the marginal. Now, in the policies that have been followed more recently during the pandemic, we have been following what are called supply side policies. These supply side policies are ones that actually benefit the businesses. The idea is that if concessions are given to businesses, then they would invest more. And when they invest more, more jobs will be created. But what's happened is that in the absence of adequate demand, the investment process has suffered. So investment in the economy peaked in 2012-13 at about 36%. Then it came down to about 30%. So inadequate investment is because of lack of demand. And the RBI's data on capacity utilization shows it has been hovering between 70 and 75. Now, when capacity utilization is low, then investment will be low. And that's why before the pandemic itself, when the corporate sector was given massive concession and corporate tax rate, they gained 1.6 lakh crores of profits, but investment did not increase. And actually the extra profit was used to retire the debt. So a large number of corporates are debt-free at the moment. One can mention, say, the Reliance, for instance. It was the largest debtor in February 2020, and by August 2020, it had become completely debt-free as a result of this process. So in other words, what we need are demand-side policies, because if the 94% in the unorganized sector whose incomes have declined, their employment has declined, and therefore, in a sense, mass demand has declined. And that's why even prior to the pandemic, the rate of growth of the economy officially had dropped from 8% to 3.1% over 8 quarters. So the crisis was brewing even prior to the pandemic. And then the pandemic aggravated it. So the unorganized sector has been hit very hard 4 times in the last 6 years. First, demonetization hit them because they operate with cash, and cash was short, so demonetization hit the unorganized sector. Then the GST hit the unorganized sector, because even though unorganized sector is exempt from GST, but they cannot operate the way the organized sector does. And therefore, the prices actually remain unchanged, where the prices of the organized sector decline. So demand has shifted from the unorganized sector to the organized sector. And there are any number of examples of that, from the textile sector, from the leather goods sector, from the FMCG sector, pressure cooker industry, and the commerce, for instance, trade. So from the neighborhood store, demand has shifted to e-commerce or to the malls. So there's a shift in demand from the unorganized sector to the organized sector. Now, this is not captured in our data, because the quarterly data on the basis of which we calculate our GDP is based largely on the organized sector and on agriculture. But in the case of agriculture also, it is assumed that the targets are fulfilled, which may or may not be fulfilled. Like, for instance, this year, the targets are not being fulfilled, given the drought, given the heat, sudden buildup of heat in March, April, the lack of rainfall in the month of June, July, and then excess rainfall in October. So our agriculture targets would not be fulfilled this year, but it is assumed in the quarterly data that the targets are fulfilled. So agriculture data is not properly incorporated. Unorganized sector data is not incorporated at all. And that's why I've been arguing that the Indian economy is not growing at 7%. It's actually now at -1% growth rate, because the unorganized sector is unambiguously declining. So if you calculate that separately, which is what I tried to do in my article in the Hindu in June, then you'll find that the rate of growth now is about -1%. It's not 7%. 7% is only the rate of growth of the organized sector. And mind you, in the quarterly data, even the organized sector is not fully captured, because only about 250 to 300 companies that declare their corporate results, they get counted in the organized sector data. So the quarterly data is not, cannot be the basis. But its implications are very serious, because it means that the unorganized sector is marginalized in data. It is not there. And therefore, when the government says the rate of growth of the economy is good, then it's only talking about the organized sector. But the very fact that the organized sector is doing very well implies that the unorganized sector is actually declining. And therefore, in policy terms, government says if the economy is the fastest growing economy in the world, we don't need to do anything special. And therefore, they continue with the supply side policies. I call this the colonization of the unorganized sector, that the organized sector has colonized the unorganized sector. Its demand is increasing, it is growing, but at the expense of the unorganized sector. So there is an invisibilization of the unorganized sector, and there's a colonization of the organized sector. So this is the problem that our migrants are facing, because the migrants belong to the unorganized sector. And therefore, their concerns are not in our policy at the moment. Our Atmanirbhar Bharat package, which was launched in May 2020, when we were dealing with the first wave of the COVID, that policy package is entirely supply side, where the unorganized sector doesn't fit in. The problem in the Indian economy is that we have in the industrial sector 6,000 large units, 6 lakh small and medium units, and 6 crore micro units. So the unorganized sector consists of the small sector and the micro sector, and they constitute of the MSME employment 97.5% of the employment. So when the policies are made for MSME sector, it's the medium sector which takes advantage of it. The advantages don't filter down to the micro sector. And it's the micro sector which, if it is declining, then the problem of unemployment grows. Labor from the rural areas is unable to get into that. So there are two problems. One is of the micro sector, the other is of agriculture. Agriculture incomes are low because the farmer in the farm gate is not getting the correct price for his crop, for his or her crop. So therefore, what we need to do is we need to reform agriculture and introduce minimum support price for all crops. Now, there are many who actually don't want that to happen, especially big business. The other thing is that workers must get a living wage. So whether in rural areas or in the workers in the urban areas, they should get a living wage. The Constitution promises a living wage, but we are not able to give a living wage to the workers. If the workers in the rural areas were getting a living wage, then they would not be forced to migrate. At the moment, they're forced to migrate because the living conditions are very weak. When they come to the urban areas, here also the living wage is not available. So even if they work on contract in the organized sector, they actually get salaries which are close to what the unorganized sector has. So therefore, they're not able to save. And therefore, they're not able to maintain their families at the level at which they should be able to maintain. So in other words, it is the marginalization of the unorganized sector, marginalization of agriculture, that has in the first place resulted in migration from rural to urban areas. And then when there's a crisis, because they don't have savings, they're forced to migrate back from the urban to the rural areas. So we need to look at our development paradigm. And that's why in our report on employment, unemployment that we have produced, which has been released recently, we've suggested how this can be reformed. The question is, do we have the resources? Because one of the things that is said is we don't have the resources to take care. But that, I think, is a question of priority. What is our priority? Where do we spend our public funds? What kind of expenditure do we make on education, on rural employment guarantee scheme? And can we start an urban employment guarantee scheme? So in our report, what we have suggested is that we need to focus on the social sectors which are employment generating, where educated youth can get employment. We know that the employment problem gets more and more difficult as the degree is higher and higher. So in the age group of 15 to 29, most of the unemployment is amongst those who have higher degrees. So the problem can be resolved if we have much greater expenditure on the social sectors. Second, the micro sector needs to be separated from MSME, and we need to produce policies where the micro sector would be able to get support from the government. Now, cooperatives can be formed, which will take care of the problem of the micro sector, which is marketing, which is finance, and which is technology. If we separate the micro sector and form cooperatives of the micro sector units, then this problem can also be taken care of, in which case the non-farm employment in the rural areas and micro sectors in the urban areas, they'll start to prosper. They'll offer a lot of employment, and therefore people need not migrate from the rural areas to the urban areas. If we give living wage to all workers, then the demand for food will increase, and that will then lead to the farmers getting the minimum support price that they actually are demanding, and their incomes would go up. And once that happens, then that will also buoy the rural economy much more. Finally, as I said, the MSP for all crops is a feasible proposition because the demand for food will go up, and the environmental damage that is caused because we plant those crops which are not necessarily suited to that particular area. The socio, political and ecological conditions are not right for many of the crops that are grown. Say for instance, sugarcane in water-stressed areas, paddy in water-stressed areas. These results in distortions. These results in problems of the environment and so on. So these policies could help the rural areas to revive, incomes there to revive, farmers' incomes to increase, and that would then obviate the need for migration of these people. Now, such a program could be opposed by businesses, could be opposed by middle classes, because it would be inflationary. If you give living wage and you have higher food prices, there would certainly be inflation. But the question arises, should the living standard of the middle classes and upper classes be at the expense of the rural areas and at the expense of the farmers? Justice demands that in a democratic society like India, the interest of the 94% should be the predominant interest. If that is done, then that would require political movements which would then be able to force these kind of changes. So I think the problem of migration is a political problem, it's a developmental problem, it's a problem of our priorities being incorrect. So if we correct for all that, then only the migration problem can probably be tackled. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you very much, sir. I think you have to leave. So I'm going to ask one or two questions to you. One is, as you have said that you have been writing, I've seen other writings also. They are constantly reminding government that we should focus on more policies which are on the demand side and not that much on supply side, which, as you rightly said, that may be benefiting the larger business more and not the people, and putting money directly into the pockets of people could help revive the economy or in a much better way. So one question is why, despite this evidence and suggestion and advice, the government is still reluctant to follow this and keep following the supply side. What is their logic? Because they cannot directly say that we want to profit the big businesses, but what is their argument for following the supply side? Second, a little mix of economics and demographic question, that migration is taking place from the largely poorer states to the more developed state within India when we are talking of internal migration. And the demographic diversity suggests that migration is going to increase further in the coming years, because like between 2011 to 2036, 55% of population growth will take place in these 5 north central states, which are largely poor. So the migration is going to increase. And also because aging will be catching up on the states which are developed states like Kerala, Tamil Nadu, who reduced their fertility earlier than these 5-6 states in the north central states. So my question to you is that in this scenario, when migration is going to increase, and it's happening from the poorer states to the more developed states, why those states are not able to take care of these migrants if they have money and they have the policies for their own people, plus the employers, whether they are in agriculture like in Punjab or in other sectors in Kerala, Maharashtra, who are doing very well, why they are not able to ensure that migrants also get the same wage which the local laborers are getting?
So, you have asked 2 questions. Let me take them one by one. The supply side economics is an ideological, churn. Demand side or supply side, which policies to follow, is basically coming from an ideological prospect. And BJP's policies are basically pro-business. So they have been trying these supply side policies. For instance, in agriculture, the 3 bills that came, which they had to withdraw, or the labor codes, which they wanted to implement, which they've been trying to implement since the time they came to power in 2014. And during the pandemic, because the opposition was hardly there, they thought this is the right time to push these policies. So I think it's an ideological thing as far as the current government is concerned, that they will be able to push through pro-business policies. They're not looking at the macro picture. They're not looking at what that would imply. For instance, the World Bank has suggested universal basic income as a means of putting money in the hand of the poor. Now, I can see that when there is a crisis like the pandemic, a lot of people have lost income, some money needs to be given in the hands of everybody so they can do it. But in the long run, that does not give dignity to the worker. So it's work that gives dignity. So I would prefer that if there's money that is there, then that money should be spent on actually generating employment, and especially in the micro sector and in the rural areas, the non-farm sector. So for that, investment has to be increased. A rural employment guarantee scheme has to be strengthened. Urban employment guarantee scheme has to be created. And for that, where would the money come from? Wealth taxation is one thing that we've almost eliminated. That can yield, a good sum of money, 3 to 4% of the GDP can come, given the huge skewedness in the holding of wealth. Then, along with wealth tax, you have to do gift tax and estate duty. So these together can give 3 to 4% of GDP, and that could be quite adequate. We have estimated that to give proper work to these 278 million who don't have proper work, and if you assume that you give them a wage, which is 30% of the per capita income of the country, then you require 5% of GDP. And of that, the government will have to spend 1% of GDP, and the micro sector and agriculture will have to spend 4% of GDP. And the production will therefore rise by about 15% of GDP, assuming that their productivity is the same as in the unorganized sector. So therefore, it can be self-financing. But government can raise more funds through wealth taxation, as I said, and we have a very large black economy that undermines policies. According to me, the black economy size in 2012 had already reached 62% of GDP. If you could bring that into the tax net, then you would get 40% tax collected on that, both direct and indirect tax. So you could get an extra 24% tax GDP ratio from the black economy, which would mean the fiscal deficit of 10% would turn into a surplus of 14%, and that could be utilized to spend money on education, health, various infrastructure projects, etc. And that could generate a huge amount of employment in the economy. So in other words, better policies could actually lead to demand side policies. But the government doesn't see it tackling the black economy, or think of giving a living wage to the workers, or think of giving a minimum support price to all crops. So things that need to be done, ideologically, they don't see that would actually pay for their constituency that they represent. So to me, following supply side policies, even though it's clear that we need to follow demand side policies, is an ideological thing. And the pressure for that also comes from the international agencies, that you need to give concessions. For instance, capital become highly mobile, and capital therefore gets concessions from other countries, and the capital then demands that the other host countries also give them the same concessions. So if South Korea doesn't have capital gains tax, then there'll be pressure in India also to not have capital gains tax, and so on and so forth. So mobility of capital has meant that governments have been forced to give concessions. That's why you've had the race to the bottom in Europe, because East Europe, cut its taxes, and then Germany, Britain, France, etc., also had to cut their taxes, and therefore the money left for public services decreased. So this race to the bottom may be now checked with the new international agreement on a minimum tax. But I think that minimum tax has to be raised further. But to get agreement amongst a large number of countries, perhaps 15% was what it's begun with, but you perhaps need to raise that. So I think it's ideological, it's global, it's because of the strength that capital has acquired over the last 35 years, where because of high mobility, it's able to extract concessions. So I think India is also in the roughly same boat, that these concessions are a part of what, because even when the tax rate was cut, the corporate tax rate was cut in 2019, it was said we are bringing tax rate in line with the Southeast Asian countries. So it's the same thing, the capital making us compete with each other and giving concessions. So supply side policies are coming both from ideological predilections and also from the mobility of capital that globally it has acquired. So I think that's why we are not going in for the demand side policies, because we are giving tax concessions and so on. We don't want the fiscal deficit to rise very sharply, because the IMF and the credit rating agencies, they're all looking at it hawk-like. And if you raise your fiscal deficit, then they also then downgrade you, which then means that your foreign borrowing becomes more expensive. So there are all these factors that are underlying this thing. Now, the other question that you asked was about migration from poor to richer states, and why the richer states are not able to take care of their migrants. I think the reason is very clear. We are in a marketized economy. So what does the marketized economy do? Two things. One is capital will flow to where the markets are. So, what does UP mean for capital? It doesn't mean that capital will go to Banda. and Kanpur has deindustrialized. It will come to neighborhood of Delhi where the market is. So Noida and Ghaziabad are the markets. So it's here that the capital is coming. What does Maharashtra mean for capital? It doesn't mean it will go to Vidarbha where you have suicides. It means Bombay Pune belt and Bombay Vadodara Surat belt. So it's getting concentrated. So concentration of capital is increased as a result of this process of marketization that is taking place in the world. And when you have marketization, then it's the markets that prevail. So two things are happening there. First is that the credit deposit ratio of the poorer states is much worse than the all India credit deposit ratio. So like Bihar has half the credit deposit ratio of the nation. That means Bihar is poor, so it generates very little saving. And even half the savings that it generates leaks out from Bihar to other states. So Delhi, Bombay have a credit deposit ratio which is more than 100. That means drawing funds from everywhere else. And poorer states are losing funds. So that means that the divide in the country will keep on increasing. And the richer states, they will not take care of the migrant laborers, because if you can get labor cheap, then you want labor cheap. So they're not there for social work, in a sense, supporting the migrant labor. So the industry, the business, the farms, they're not going to support with a higher. So unless there's a consciousness increase amongst the farmers, amongst the businesses, that they must pay a living wage. And for that, I think socioeconomic movements are needed, and government has to come up with policies that the living wage has to be enforced in the country, because that's a promise in the constitution. So that's why I don't think the richer states on their own are going to do any increase in the wages or support to the migrant workers, etc. This has to be through policy and through socioeconomic movements, which will force a higher wage for these people.
Quickly, your thoughts on how, what is the role of the remittances from the international migrants also, but the internal migrants, and how, they could be better used for not for only individual cases, but in the general community sense.
In a marketized economy, it's very difficult to see that remittances sent either from abroad or from the richer states to the poorer states could be regulated by the government to go into areas where it would yield future productivity, because the idea should be to invest it for future productivity. But the reason why people have migrated is because they could not get employment, and their families in the areas from where they have migrated are in distress. So therefore, it will go into consumption. But the point is that consumption also increases demand. So the question is, why does that not improve matters? And the reason is that you actually need to invest more in those areas. But as I said, the more backward the state is, the more the leakage of funds out of that to other areas. So while inward remittances help in boosting consumption, if half the savings of the Bihar are going out of Bihar, then it will lower the investment potential within the economy. It will lower the production potential in the economy. And that's why the state would continue to struggle. So what is leaking out of the state may be far more than what is the remittance that is coming in from outside, whether from abroad or whether from the remittance from the richer states to the poorer states. So I think that's why I was saying that the development paradigm needs to be looked at, where local demand becomes buoyant and local employment generation begins to take place. Then the problem of migration will be not as acute as it has become, where the differentials have become very large. So if you have employment generation in the backward states at a large level, there'll be less migration, local income generation, and so on. And people will be able to spend the money as they wish, without there being a problem of investment leaking out of the economy.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
And we may ask, if you are still around, maybe other panelists or other questioners, participants may ask questions, but if you have to go, then thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Now I'll request Akriti to share her views on the problem which were there, the key issues which are there, and what policy or programmatic things can be done for migrants, so that if same situation happen, we don't face the same situation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Devender and Professor Arun Kumar and Professor Rajanji have already spoken about some of the key issues. I would like to highlight some of the already spoken issues and some more important points. First of all, the COVID-19 crisis should not be seen as a health crisis, but a humanitarian crisis. And we must not forget, given that public memory is not that sharp and we tend to forget. So a program like this to recall and then to reinforce some of these points is extremely important. Also, it was not a natural catastrophe, but a man-made one resulting from sheer mismanagement is also something that we must not forget. Because as we remember very well, it was a mockery on the working class that happened when a lot of policies and a lot of suggestions were coming out, a lot of things were coming out that you need to work from home, which became actually narc from home for so many people. And if you actually talk about homeless populations, that they didn't have home at all. So issues of social distancing, physical distancing, when we know that such a large chunk, 50% of the population are actually staying in very cramped housing spaces and shelters, then the issue of hygiene and washing your hands again and again, overlooking the idea how, again, such a large chunk of the population did not have access to even piped water. Forget about clean drinking water. So it's not that this huge chunk of working class population was affected by pandemic alone, but the government policy response was something which was much more difficult for them to deal with. And as Professor Kumar has already talked about, the culmination of this crisis as a result of repeated shocks, not just due to lockdown, but also with preceding shocks like demonetization and GST, where I would say that this was a process of forced formalization that led to decimation of the sector, not their rehabilitation, because the costs of formalization were actually put on them, but the benefits of formalization did not accrue. And we all know about this whole idea of widening of inequalities and polarizations of all kind that have taken place, especially in the post-pandemic world, of income, health, jobs, education, infrastructure, and nutrition. And there is data to support all of them. If you look at 2019 and 22, and you look at compare the numbers, and one very interesting and small indicator is if you look at the record-breaking ownership of luxury cars, that has actually spiked. And I think it's not just anecdotal that you'll see it on roads, but there's also data that has come out that how this skewed income transfers have taken place. Also, I think another very important point is the effect on small enterprises. That shut down, and again, the employment in these small enterprises were the most. So there were factory closures, and there were hundreds of millions of people so an estimated figure is about 100 million people lost their jobs. Now the question is, where have they all been reabsorbed, right? Again, the different kinds of unemployments that Professor Arun Kumar have mentioned, and I would throw some light on the gig economy, which has also supposedly absorbed a lot of this kind of educated and skilled labor force. What is happening there is also something that I would talk about. But there was a lot of underreporting of data that took place. The official reported death toll due to COVID was something around 4 lakh that was reported, but the actual numbers, according to, again, various agencies, is coming out to be 40 lakh, 2.5 million around the first wave, and then another 1.5 million in the second wave. So a lot of underreportage, and within this kind of a 40 lakh of death toll, and perhaps even more, the people from the poorer sections are completely neglected, and their deaths have not been reported. Deaths due to lockdown is another data that has always been fudged and not reported. So we must not forget that these are actually some of the very, very pressing issues that need to come out. Then my own PhD ethnography work among rickshaw pullers, street vendors, home-based workers, sex workers, and gig workers have again shown alarming issues that these workers had to go through during the pandemic, and even post-pandemic shocks that still perpetuate amongst them, where if you look at people like, if you look at sections like street vendors, for example, there were forced evictions, and even when unlockdowns were announced, that even then the police and other authorities were actually constantly indulging in rent seeking. So their vulnerabilities actually increased much more, where sections of society were taking advantage of these sections. Also domestic workers, there's a strong class bias that operated, where middle class populations and a lot of urban populations were doing all kinds of discrimination. If you look at gated communities and the kind of experiences that informal workers had to go through, even post-pandemic, have actually still endured. So a lot of cases of rampant forced evictions from their workplaces and places of shelter and living continued to operate. Some of the support systems, for example, role of neighbors, there was pushing and testing of human potentials and relations that came up when people were locked down away from their families in the cities after the sudden lockdown. Again, a lot of such reported how there were struggles for a single cylinder. And a lot of issues have been reported regarding how ration distribution was very rampant. But again, over 100 million of the needy did not get that access. So again, some studies have also pointed out that even this ration distribution via the civil society and the local governments was not adequate. So again, the numbers on the hunger data again point to that. On the issue of public spending, so many countries actually increased their public spending manifold, but they started giving something called COVID bonuses and unemployment benefits to the workers. Whereas what we saw was, again, like as the name of this panel discussion suggests, that lessons that were unlearned. I think this is one of the biggest lesson that was unlearned and missed, is that despite looking at how the society and the economy went, the fissures actually deepened and were cut open, public spending did not increase as much. And as Professor Arun Kumar said, that also talked about wealth tax and other things, that if you look at the corporate tax cuts that happened a couple of years ago, the central government lost more than 2 trillion in revenue, and even they continued to bail out a lot of companies and firms, but the divide between the small and the big firm also increased, and of course the gap between the formal and the informal. So income support, unemployment benefits, cash transfers, and something like a National Employment Guarantee Act should have been the direct corollaries and way forward after as responses to such a crisis that exposed the problems with the Indian economy, but nothing of that sort was learned. In terms of the labor codes, we all know that the new labor codes actually have been pushed, even if they've been passed in the parliament without discussion, just the way agricultural bills were, the agricultural codes were passed. And it's actually a race to the bottom. And people also say it in a very shameless way, that it's actually also like an equalizer between organized and unorganized sector, which is actually also snatching away whatever the organized sector had earned in terms of benefits. So this race to the bottom is something that we see has been happening, and there's also a lot of backdoor kind of implementation of these, where all kinds of protection, all kinds of union busting, and so many other proxy methods of not giving overtime and changing the entire dynamics of labor benefits have taken place. And COVID has actually acted like a big catalyst in all of this, where owners and like company owners, firm owners have said that this is because of the COVID. So wage theft, the incidence of wage thefts have increased manifold. I would also want to talk about women workers and women migrants, who are even more invisibilized from this entire scene. We know how, for example, cases of domestic violence had increased during the lockdowns, and women workers, there's who have actually dropped out of the labor markets. We see how resilient the male workforce has been to go back and join back the labor markets. But for women, it has not been that easy, and that actually again gets pointed out in historically low labor force participation among women numbers. Also, another lesson that one can clearly see from the way this COVID mismanagement took place was of fiscal concentration and fiscal centralization, where decisions were made without any coordination with state governments, and rather than a coordinated effort and response, a very contrary kind of a response mechanism was seen. So it was also how cities became very unwelcoming to the workers, which is why we saw such, not just because of economic reasons, but also emotional and other social security reasons, that workers actually went back to their villages, and a reverse migration was seen. So again, one of the major reasons, if you look at historically, of rural underdevelopment and a very almost a deindustrialization of sort historically of the villages has happened to ensure a cheap surplus labor supply in the city, and which again points out that the whole skewed nature of the urban-rural divide, and of small towns and big metro cities, and this whole the peripheries of various cities expanding, but in terms of work, but not in terms of living conditions and different benefits that many of these workers should be getting, does not take place. So on the issues of, I would say, 4 major parameters where a lot of unorganized workforce has suffered the most is are basically kamai, dawai, padhai, and mehengai, that they have been grappling with even today. Lastly, I would want to talk about this new forms, gig work and app-based work. For example, a lot of in deliveries, Swiggy, Zomato, and other Ola, Uber, and all these new companies that are coming in and are claiming to be actually absorbing a lot of these unemployed youth, and even people who have been retrenched from their previous work. It's also said that technology is acting like an equalizer. But again, some of the studies that we are currently doing in Pegam with University of Pennsylvania is reporting very, very alarming results in terms of working conditions and earnings, where the initial earnings of some of these workers have been promising, but just as few months go, these workers are not even able to make minimum wages, are working overtime as much as 16 to 18 hours in a day, and the kind of time that they are able to give for resting, sleeping, and other, and there's no benefit in cases of accidents and so many other issues that they face. There's absolutely no boss to actually seek any benefits from. And even if we look at the social security code, which does mention gig workers, there are no policies, state level policies in place to protect them. So a lot of regulation is required in this sector as well. Because pandemic has supposedly given rise to these tech-based companies, but it's very important to look at the realities of this sector as well. So to conclude that these labor markets are still very skewed and are constantly going more in the direction of vulnerability, which we really need to look at and call out. And again, the traditional informal sector like construction workers and others, there's e-Shram portal, as Professor Rajan had talked about, but there are a lot of problems with even those kinds of, the registration is not that easy. We are expecting these workers to know, there's already so much of digital divide that we are expecting them to know the processes of registration. And even people who have registered as of now are not really coming under any policy or safety net. So what happens after the registration and recognition of these workers is another very important issue that we need to look at. And again, there's another set of issues with respect to agricultural workers and farmers that, again, previous panelists have talked about briefly, but there is no fixed pricing when it comes to exports and how the pricing actually takes place for these farmers. That also fluctuates and disfavorably sets in, where middlemen and other people take the benefit again, which is skewed towards the urban and the middle classes. So maybe in the question and answer session, one can talk in detail about any of these points as well. So thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much, Akriti. Now I'll invite Professor Rajan. Professor Rajan, the issues, many issues which were discussed here also, they are long-standing. We know the situation of migrants in the context of India, also the situation of informal sector workers. But what do you think, whether this lockdown and migrants marching to their homes, was this an opportunity which taught us something, or which was acted upon by the experts or by the government? Like in the recent context, how do you see what were the issues, what were the issues that those got highlighted, were picked up by the experts, were picked up by the governments, and were acted upon, and what additional could be done?
Thank you, Professor Singh. And we already had some 3 brilliant presentations by Professor Bhagat, Professor Kumar, and also Agridi. I think she also spoke really important points. So I don't know where to start, where to end, but I will be making, because already we are getting late also, already 5:20. And being a Sunday and International Migrant Day, so I thought I should talk less, but let me see what I can do. But I think I would like to start with this, In fact, when our friends in, the Policy Institute, when they send me this invitation to attend this particular thing as a panelist, I thought I should attend or not. That's why I have not responded to them for 2-3 days. I was just holding myself. Then I got 2-3 reminders from the organizers. Are you be part of that? Because why I attended that? Because, what lesson we have learned? What is that? We have not learned any lessons. In fact, I would like that we need COVID again. Because I think maybe next year, maybe next March, we can have another lockdown with another COVID wave. Maybe it is good we will remember the migrants. Otherwise, I think everything is forgotten. Then what I have to talk? No, that's why I did not give, because we have not learned any lessons. And so nothing is there. I think we have not learned, and we are not going to learn unless another COVID wave comes. It should be much worse than what we had. Then only we will learn. Because I think this current wave was not enough for us to learn about migration issue. We are doing a lot of things on health. We are doing a lot of things on, vaccine. So many things are happening on the health front. But migration front, I don't think anything happening. So I want to start with, of course, everybody raised. One is that what we learn on the migration data, for example. Let us start with that. In fact, I have told in many of the interviews during COVID-19, even after that, India has currently 400 million people currently are internal migrants. And 400 million people are living in a place they are not born, as per the census definition. 200 million migrants. Now, many people tell me, how do you get it? I get it. That's it. I don't want to tell. Many government gives a lot of number. You don't ask him. Why you are asking only me? Why only me asked? How did you get the number? You don't ask when the planning commission produce some number. You don't ask them, no, because you think it's correct. Then I told many people that if you think it is not correct, please, talk about that. Why it is not correct. And none of them never raised. Now people are using the number. I'm very glad people are using that 400 million number. But still, we have no census. We have no census. We still don't know, and we are not interested to know how many migrants in this country. And then when I talk to people, census is not there. And some people tell me, we are going to add some question in the National Family Health Survey. What do you want to add? Migrants itself be a separate survey to be done. You are adding 2 questions, and they say we are adding some question. In fact, it is so sad to tell people we are adding some question in the National Family Health Survey. I told them fertility is over in this country, and an average woman in India produces 2 children. What more you want to study? You should stop this, the national migration, what is called the National Family Health Survey. Put the money to do a national migration survey. Why you are wasting money on fertility? Everybody got only 2 children. What do you want to study more? What do you want to study more? That itself indicates that we are not interested in migration and migration issues. Adding 3 questions, 2 questions, this is all giving lip service to the migrants and migration. I think it is very, very sad when policymakers and researchers tell me we added this question there, we added 1 question in the IHDS, we have added 1 question in the NSSO. Forget about that. We don't want a migrant to be the second-class citizen in the survey. I want them to be first class. First class. You do a migration survey, then add 2 questions on fertility. I have no problem. You ask them about their fertility, how long they visit their, their wives, what method they use when they. You ask them. You have a migration survey. Add questions. What about the infant mortality rate? If the husband is not there, wife is not there, both of them are leaving. You should make migration as #1 survey. Then add your all questions. We are not interested in that. They say there is no money. There is money for fertility studies. There is money for mortality studies. There is money for vaccination. There is money for everything. Why there is no money for migration? I think that's why I said we need at least 2-3 more COVID episodes we need in this country if you want to study. I think that is what I want to tell at this moment. Then only migration people will talk about that. This is one important point on the data. Now look at the crisis period. We don't know the number. You should learn from what is happening in the other states. We were running what is called the Kerala Migration Survey for the last 25 years. And when the COVID was hit, of course, Kerala hits every time first COVID, because Kerala will be the first one to get COVID. Kerala will be the first one to get HIV/AIDS. Kerala will be first one to reduce fertility. Monsoon also hits first Kerala. So Kerala hits every time. So there is no problem with that. We are happy with that. But then what Kerala did, you should learn. During COVID-19, the wave 1, I was part of the empowerment committee to advise the chief minister. And people ask me, why are you there? Because you are not a government political man. Because I thought COVID-19 lockdown means migration. How many states, how many in Indian government where you have somebody to advise them? At least they will not listen to you. Part of the committee, if the India want to have a chief economic advisor, why can't you have a chief migration advisor? Learn from the COVID experience. Why can't you have a migration advisor? What is wrong? They will kill you or what? Nobody is going to do anything. You can have a migration advisor. You can have a gender advisor. You can have the labor advisor. You can have the agriculture advisor. Why can't migration advisor? They'll say it is part of labor. Everything is part of something. Why part of something? Make it there and then make this part of something. We'll have a migration advisor. Labor will be part of that. Diaspora will be part of that. I think that is where I am looking for people. I think that is where the policy has to change, which is not happening. So when the Kerala, it hit, Kerala government asked, sir, how many people will come back from Gulf? Can you give the number? Because if they come, we have to quarantine them. And the people are calling every day, sir, we are stuck in Dubai. Because we are stuck in India itself, but they are stuck in Dubai. So they are more worried. So I told the Kerala government, there is no Kerala passport. You can't do anything. Only Indian passport is there. There is no Kerala passport. Then we were telling them, look, at least 20% of the migrants will return out of the 2 million people, which we estimated migration. So the Kerala government went to Supreme Court saying that we are ready with 250,000 beds. Ready. Please arrange the flight. Then no state in this country, we talk about remittances, 100 billion is coming. My state is getting more. My state is getting less. RBI is saying that Kerala reduced, the money is not coming to Kerala now. It is going to Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan. You all talk about money. Who sends money? Migrants. So talk about migrants. There is no migrant, there is no money, my dear friends. We should talk about, why you are talking about money, remittances. There is a beginning, there is somebody sitting there. That is migrants. And we suggested them 2.5 lakhs people will come. And Supreme Court, after a long thing, please arrange the flight. Vande Bharat flight is something which we have contributed. No state was prepared for migrants. We have prepared 250,000 beds. And I was telling people, please do the Kerala model of migration surveys as a India migration survey. What it will cost? You are getting $100 billion last year from the World Bank. $1 billion is enough to run a India migration survey. I am talking to several states. Prior to COVID-19, there was a survey done in Gujarat. There was a survey done in Punjab. There was a survey done in Tamil Nadu and Goa. After brainwashing, after COVID, only 2 states in this country said, sir, we will do migration survey. Which are the 2 states? I am very glad. Orissa is going to start a migration survey in January with 15,000 households. Jharkhand is starting a survey with 10,000 migrant survey. So 2 states have started doing migration surveys. And Kerala ready to fund the 2023 survey because we do every 5 years. 18 we did, 23. That means still migration, when I ask for a migration survey, oh, 10,000 household, 1 crore, oh my God, very high. 1 crore, very high. But what is the cost of the survey by many government is doing some surveys? What is the cost? What is the cost? 1 crore for a state survey? You are not interested to fund by any state government? That indicates you have no interest in migrants and migration, but you are interested in not migrants, not that M, migrants, but you are interested in another M called money. But you should take interest equally, migrants and money. Now you are taking interest in only money. I think that has to change. We have not changed. So I would expect maybe we should get one more COVID wave, maybe next year in 2023. I wish best luck for the migrants so that they will be again remembered by all of us. The another point I want to make about the e-SAM portal, I think Bhagat has mentioned about that. You know, you have to link, you have to have an Aadhaar card. You have to link that with the your bank passbook. You have to link with the mobile numbers. Now, mobile, you know, all 3 has to be linked. And then, of course, you have to have all your biometric. There are problems with that. Somebody might have a mobile number given somewhere for other number, he might have changed. Many people, all of us change numbers. You know, so I think we have to think about how to make it effective. As you said, it's giving only the, not migrants, it's giving some workers things, and we can think of that. Then food insecurity. Food insecurity. We had one ration card, and Kerala was giving what is called the community kitchen. Yes, we told them in the first meeting when we had, after the COVID-19, when the lockdown came, we said, nobody should starve in Kerala. Nobody should starve in Kerala in the lockdown wave 1. Nobody. So the government was opened what is called the community kitchen. The migrants were not walking from Kerala because we are giving food for them. And we had 4.5 lakhs people are put in the camps. Don't walk, come here, have food. If you want rice, you can take rice. If you want us to cook, we can cook for you. You think you want to make a north way, you take this. Food. Now we are talking about one country, one ration card. What is happening? It's implemented. If there's a problem, suppose the family has a ration card in Bihar with 4 people. The husband migrated to Delhi. Can he get his quota rice there? Wife is there. Children had moved to study in another boarding school. Can we get that? What are the mechanisms for that? I think we need one more COVID-19 back. Maybe COVID-19, maybe COVID 2020. The last point is that all the policymakers, including economists, every time people I talk, every circle they tell me, urbanization will lead to economic growth. Wonderful. That's why we are promoting what is called smart cities. Very good. Smart cities means migration. Cities growth is migration. So what are you talking? Smart city means there should be a migration, because smart city, you cannot bring people there. They will also produce children. They are moving from some places. So when you talk about urbanization, when you talk about smart cities, are we having some policy related to migration, even in the smart city project? Smart city, you have a big team. Is there anybody to advise them on migration? And finally, what we did during COVID-19, we have branded migrants as a carrier of COVID-19, a stigma. They were not allowed to come to villages, 14-day quarantine. The survey just completed for World Bank in Mumbai and Delhi, 2 cities, on the internal migration and urbanization, which I am getting right now in the World Bank. They did a small survey, and the result came, migrants were not affected by COVID-19, it's only 1%. Social media, like the migrants are the crimes. Migrants, city-wide there is a crime, migration. I think social media overplayed to project the migrants as a carrier of COVID-19. But now if you go and do a survey on migrants, ask them how many actually had COVID. I think we have to do a lot of reports on that, because the way you did that. I'm going to stop here, Professor Singh. Maybe any questions, anything. I saw one question by somebody about Nepal migrants. We are not taking care of our own migrants. Why should we worry about Nepal migrants anyway? So anyway, I'll stop there. Thank you very much, Professor Singh.
So, thank you very much. Yes, we are a little short on time, but hopefully we will have a question and answer round. So quickly, I'll ask Sandeep ji to share his views.
Thank you. Am I audible, Professor?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. My apologies for joining late. I am at Rethinking Refuge Convention in Tamil Nadu with Tamil refugees and others, so I could not come out. So my apologies to the House for joining in late. I could catch the last 2 speakers, but I could not the ones before. And I follow Professor Rajan. I'll be brief and give my perspective on where I think some progress has been made, and where I think at least social conversations have picked up steam for a possible progress in future. But largely, I concur with Professor Rajan that the lessons we ought to have learned in a large measure have slipped us all, our social constructs, our popular debates, or what is called public discourse, but also our policy making. But the ones where we made some progress, let me begin there. And that's with reference to the question of employment in urban areas. What the migrant crisis and the long walk, as this seminar is called, and thank you, IMPRI, for making this discussion. What it revealed was how the employment guarantee scheme in the rural areas were able to do a lot of shock absorption. And we have data to that. In fact, if you look at 2021 data on the number of households which took up NREGS benefits, that's up to about 7.5 crores, as against 4.8 to 5.5 crores in the years just before it. The data tells, but it's not just the data. It was also, we saw visuals of how returning migrants going back home found solace, or a degree of solace. It was not quite enough. We know there's a limit. It was not quite enough, but at least found some relative solace in the employment guarantee scheme that we have, the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. But I think the benefit of this discussion was the social sort of pressure to have thinking on urban employment. urban employment, as we know, and Akriti was touching on the point, is largely privatized. And therefore, this whole question of public urban employment was a case to point. And in that regard, I think there has been some progress. We may not see a centralized guarantee, but a number of states certainly have been pushed and propelled and encouraged to take it up. So if we leave Kerala aside, and Kerala is the first even on this, the employment scheme that Kerala has since 2010, 5 other states in the years after COVID have made urban employment policies. Now, of course, the argument is they are short of guarantees, where the monies will come from. Is it justiciable? But what's interesting and what's important is that these conversations and this thinking in the policy circle, in the state circles, is gathering fair amount of momentum. In fact, more recently, you took the name of Odisha and you took the name of Jharkhand, but also Himachal Pradesh. But more recently, Tamil Nadu and most recently Rajasthan have also legislated or are building policies on urban employment. I think that's something that I can ascribe to a large measure. It has been a long demand. So let me not just say that it came in after COVID. It has been a long demand, but certainly the crisis that we saw, the long walks that we saw, have energized a social momentum and a policy momentum in favor of urban employment schemes and hopefully eventually of urban employment guarantee. Now, what kind of guarantees those are? Are they year-round guarantees? What kind of shelves do they offer? Those are still debates. And I think there is a lot of fuzziness around it as I study the policies which have come about more recently. And the lack of clarity around where the financing will come from, how it will happen. So there are definitely gray areas there. I think the second question, where I would add to what was being said, is the question of women's work. Now, it was quite obvious, and this again not to be ascribed only to COVID or the migrant workers' long walks. Women's workforce participation, female labor force participation was already falling drastically in years before COVID. And our own surveys, I work for ActionAid, and our own surveys on 17,000 people across told us that even wage disparities had risen during COVID. So to an existing negative trend, falling trend of workforce participation, we had further acceleration in that direction. Particularly with reference to wage disparities, with reference to compensations that were given out, with reference to protections that were given out, with reference to the care burdens went up. But what, if I were to really see positive out of a largely negative trend, let me admit that, what does come is a momentum and a recognition of additional burden on women workers. One, the falling workforce, labor force participation, and secondly, the additional burden of care work on women. I think those, and of course, violence on women. So those conversations have gathered, let me call a public momentum, if not a policy momentum. And I am fundamentally of the opinion that strong public momentum and public discourses can build better protective scenarios. Because it is quite a big issue. It is quite a social issue. It is quite a societal issue. And in that regard, I see some conversations beginning to gather momentum, if I'm hopeful and optimistic, which is what I like to be, around this whole question of social valuation of work. And that's a fairly revolutionary concept if we take it ahead. The idea that, that care work needs to be socially evaluated, much as we, sort of almost a parallel dimension to the idea of an ecological valuation of work. Those who do ecological services, such as farmers who are growing biodiverse agricultures, peasant farmers, farmers who consume little, protect the ecology. Similarly, people who are, of course, needless to say, care work needs to be shared. So not taking away from that debate at all. It needs to be shared among men and women equally. But at the same time, the idea of social valuation of work, what are the critical functions of society, which are the unsung functions of society, those functions must be evaluated differentially and positively in terms of remuneration of wages, for instance, in terms of protection, in terms of social security, and one can go on. So this whole concept of not looking at valuation of work in some sort of, homogeneous, ununderstood manner into differential valuation of work, these debates and discussions, these ideas are gathering momentum. And one trigger of it, it's not a new trigger, but one trigger of it certainly comes from COVID. Associated with this whole question of the example I was giving about care work that women were dumped with during COVID and suffered with during COVID, is this whole question of frontline workers. And that's my third point. I think the other bit is what COVID did was to unmask to all of us the thinking or the value of what's called frontline workers of India. Now, these frontline workers in our common cognition in the COVID times, particularly in wave 2, 2020-21, were more with reference to those who are at the frontline health workers, whether it is the Anganwadi workers, whether it's the Ashas, who interestingly and importantly were recognized by World Health Organization, whether it's the ANMs, whether it's the other health workers in hospital and so on and so forth, or whether it is the burial and cremation ground workers. And I want to point this, and I think this understanding in the society that there are a lot of informal workers who are into very, very precarious sort of functions, which maintain the existence of the society, got socially recognized. It hasn't really resulted, to be honest, Professor, in terms of any differential benefits for them. In fact, I was looking at a survey, I pointed it here. My colleagues gave me some data that the All India Central Council of Trade Unions looked at the remuneration of burial and cremation ground workers working from 5 a.m. in the morning to 12 in the night and not still getting minimum wages. In fact, the average monthly remuneration is around 10,000 rupees or lesser than 10,000 rupees, which is not even at the minimum wage rate levels for the hours that they put in. But needless to say, the social understanding or the social recognition of the value of frontline workers, the precarities that they work under, and therefore I'm adding this dimension also to the question of social valuation of work. Definitely has gathered a citizenry momentum and did see some reflections in the policy circles. I was associated with the NHRC, National Human Rights Commission's advisories for informal workers in 2020 and 2021 as an expert. And certainly our suggestions with reference to protection of frontline workers in terms of health, in terms of PPE kits, in terms of medical support, in terms of celebration and recognition did get acceptance. But at the same time, our recommendations with reference to additional wages did not. In some states, they did announce supplementary wages or supportive wages, but nothing beyond that, nothing stable in policy at the moment. But needless to say, I consider it as a positive direction of travel, the very recognition of the nature of work of frontline workers. I will also say two more points and be quick about it in order to keep to time. I think the migrant workers crisis and the migrant workers migrations, but the migrations during COVID, let me be correct about it, also brought somewhere to the fore the whole question of people migrating, not only, I mean, it's a mixed thing, people migrating on account of climate crisis and the large numbers of people in our world, but as well as internally in India, this data is contested. ActionAid has its own data. We've done some surveys on the ground with reference and some estimations. And one thinks that roughly about 1.4 crore Indians will be moving from their homes on account of climate change alone. Yeah, and a little bit of link factors. But as Professor Rajan was saying, this is a much larger number if you take all triggers into account. But it does bring this whole question of climate migration on the table, on the policy table, and what needs to be done to compensate, to rehabilitate, and to bring succor to people who lose wages, who lose livelihoods, who lose the heat waves, for instance. More recently this year, earlier this year, the number of hours of wage lost, the number of wage days lost, the heat stress on workers, the health stress on workers. So these conversations and the idea of compensating such losses itself and the compensation from the welfare state seems to be gathering more momentum. So I think, and therefore this whole idea of also habitat losses and so on and so forth, compensation for that. So this concept of compensation, loss and damage compensation, not just for climate, but also on account of other triggers, is a possibility I see emerge from the macabre sort of, the macabre kind of play of what happened to informal workers and the losses they incurred during and after, in the aftermath of COVID. So I think that's another conversation that's somewhat gathering momentum. And that is why I feel somewhat more hopeful. The state may not have acted with as much alacrity, but certainly this is now much more in the social conscious. I'd like to thank us all. Thank you, sir, for allowing me the time, and to my colleagues at IMPRI for giving me this space and inviting me here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandeepji. And you raised 3-4 important points. Hopefully other panelists would like to comment on that. But because we are short of time, so I'll just ask all the panelists to point out or identify one issue or one action point which they think should be at the forefront for the government or the policy makers.
Should I start?
Yeah, please.
Yes. So one point, as Professor Arun Kumar also said, that agriculture needs more investment. I would like to add, yes, agriculture needs more investment, but diversification. And we have to have the rural development strategy. Because if you produce more food grain, who is going to buy? We are food sufficient country. And if you produce more food, what will be the demand elasticity of food grain? So we have to look at rural development. And then in rural development, there must be a spatial strategy. And this spatial strategy, I must add, Pura, providing urban amenities to the rural area, what our former president, APJ Abdul Kalam, has conceived. It can generate the certain agglomeration economy. Professor Kumar was saying that the investment is going to the big city. Why? Or the developed states. Because it is profitable, there is agglomeration economy. We have to create agglomeration economy in the rural sector by providing urban amenities in the Pura model. Now, this model is gradually not upscaled. Now it is called Syama Prasad Mukherjee Urban Mission, but it has again become sectoral instead of becoming intersectoral, and there is a convergence of providing infrastructure and etc. So that I think I would like to suggest this will be great help in restricting survival migration and aspirational migration. These are two things. Migration is going to continue to rise, but those migration will be accumulative, aspirational, developmental. But these survival migration, which is circular, temporary, and seasonal type of, that will be reduced. So thank you very much. That's, and I would like to leave also. I have to go away. So thank you very much. It's a nice listening, our panelists and everybody. Thank you. We'll meet again.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Bhagat.
Next we go to
Kadan.
I have nothing to say, Professor, because I already spoke, So I only wanted we can get one more time COVID-19, maybe next year. Then probably we can learn more from that. So I'm looking forward to that.
Can I ask you one question?
Yeah, you can ask me.
You said that we need to have a national migrant survey, and there might be reluctance at the central level because of fund or because we already have many surveys, despite recognizing that we need to have this survey. Do you think that we can have some innovation in the form of, like, for example, in 2017, Niti Aayog calculated migration based on railway traffic or railway travels. And in this pandemic, again, some app-based data gathering was there. That was just capturing the number from where to where they are going. But because India is high on technology, especially IT sector, so do we need to have similar kind of like census kind of field-based, face-to-face survey, or we can have some more innovation where we don't invest that much resources or money or people, but still able to gather good information on migrants?
No, I think, I have no problem in adding questions, but you can come with multiple sources, because I need at least the approximate some numbers for the migrants. Because when somebody called me and asked me that, sir, how many chappals exported from India, we know that by every day, not forget about every week. How many cars exported, you ask them, you have a statistics. How many COVID is there, you have a statistics every day. Suddenly you have built a COVID website. Every day, how many people got COVID, how many recovered, how many, you are able to do that. Am I right? So why, I think my point is that interest is not there. I think that is where I am more challenging point. I don't think it is a money question. You can think of something, but the point is that the commitment from the people, yes, they are important people. 1/3 of the Indian people are moving. You cannot ignore them. So my interest is that how do you mainstream migration into development? You have to mainstream migration development. You can't do development by urbanization. Fine. Invest in agriculture. Fine. No problem. I have nothing against that. But I'm telling you, you have to mainstream migration into development. I think that is what I wanted to say. So I have no problem. But even then, Professor Singh, is that if the state government is not ready to fund, say, 1 crore to study migration, what is that we are talking about in this country? What is that we are talking about? I tell them many times, for me, they are like warriors. Like our army personnel are protecting us in the India-China border, India-Bangladesh border. These people are also fighting. They are fighting against poverty in their own place. They are fighting against unemployment in their own state, in their own villages. They are fighters. How much you are putting money in the government for defense security? Fighters. They are also fighters in their own sense. Because I feel they are fighters. I see them in Trivandrum. People walking around. They are fighters. They are leaving the language. They are leaving their wives, children. They are coming to city which they don't know. But still they are, because why they are coming? They are fighting against poverty in the place of origin. Fighting against unemployment in the place of origin. And then leads to send the money back home. Children are studying, eating well. The children are going to English medium school, getting a decent house. I think that's why I'm saying, why you should know about them. I think their contribution is enormous. And also you talk about sustainable development goals. If you allow migration to flow freely, all goals can be achieved. Reduce poverty, done. Improve women literacy, done. Housing, done. Everything will be done. I think that I want that importance, migration. I don't want to be NFHS asking 3 questions. I want this asking 3 questions. I want to be important. I don't want to be the last one to eat. I want that to be the priority, migration. I think that is where we are not missing. That's why I said, how many states have a lot of advisors by the chief ministers? How many states has a migration advisor? I was there only 2 months to search for the COVID period. Now I don't advise them. Why? Why not? You have agriculture, industry, am I right? Gender expert. Why there is no migration expert? Nobody is there. You train them. You train them. We need a migration expert in every state to advise the planning board, planning commission, whatever the government. The CM should have an advisor on all subjects. Agriculture, industry, scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, OBC. You do that. Minority development. I have no problem with anybody. We don't want to compete anybody. Give them proper recognition of their contribution to the society. That's all I want.
Sandeep ji, Akriti.
Yes. I think a lot of important things have come in. I think the paramount issue that wherever right now the workers are, there needs, one needs that the society has a particular working class sensibility and sensitivity. So I think that is a paramount, whether we look at how society or middle class approaches the working class, or the policy discourse approaches the working class, we need to have that basic sensibility and sensitivity to be able to formulate policies for workers. So pro-worker environment can happen only through that. And with that, I think the focus on aggregate demand and the stimulus that is needed right now is job creation, is something like giving income in the hands of the needy, the working class populations. And for that, as we all know, initial policy stimulus like income transfers, like an Urban Employment Guarantee Act, and also in terms of unemployment benefits till the time that we're not able to create adequate jobs, is something that need to be the focal areas. And of course, we know that most of these informal workers are also migrant workers. So migration policy is also therefore equally important, where in the source cities and source villages, if there are adequate opportunities available, which I think is a long-term scenario where we're talking about rural livelihoods, is something which is more long-term. Therefore, wherever the workers are, we first need to rehabilitate and give income into their hands, which will also have positive impacts on the GDP and economy at large as well. So.
Yeah, Sandeep.
Sure. No, since you said what's the one big point that you want to talk about in the end, and the only one big point that I want to talk about is a national employment guarantee, which is both urban and rural, number one. Number two, it's both for citizen and who is not the citizen, the refugee here. So I think an overarching employment guarantee for irrespective of work permit status for those who are in India and who will be in India for the foreseeable future, both in rural and urban, including the refugees, including those who don't have Aadhaar cards, for instance, is the one mega kind of direction we should sort of go towards. Or tread on, as many others have indicated, not just from the perspective of generating demand, not just from the perspective of putting sort of tailwinds into the engine of growth, but from the perspective of a better human future. And I think that's the ask particularly in light of challenges that we anticipate already, the shocks that are anticipated, the climatic shocks that are anticipated, the economic shocks that are anticipated, and the conflict shocks that are ailing us all around. Thank you very much. That's the one point I'd like to make as my closing point. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very nice suggestion. And there was one question also from Bamdev Sejal, like how we are treating migrants from other countries. So as you suggested, that if they say national employment guarantee for all, like whether they are citizens or whether they are refugees or migrants who are staying here from other countries, that could take care of it. From other, I can take like the dignity of work and dignity of workers, migrant workers, sensitivity we need to have to them, their issues. And as Professor Rajan and Professor Bhagat said, we need to mainstream migration into development. I think that is more important, that we recognize that the role and contribution of the migrants in the making of the not only the destination societies, but also the origin society, when they give in the form of like providing education to their children, taking care of their elderly, are overall contributing to the remittances in terms of like making house, generating employment, supporting the local economy in the origin society also. So we need to recognize that, and this is was an opportunity where we could have learned some lesson, hopefully, as just, some of our panelists have shown, that there is public recognition, public valuation, as well as understanding by the policymakers that things should be done, and some steps which have been taken, like the one nation, one card, ration card. I think those are the takeaway from this panel discussion. I thank you all the panelists from my side, and now I invite Anchal to give the concluding remark.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So as we come to the end of this extremely enlightening discussion, I, Anchal, researcher at IMPRI Impact and Policy Research Institute, New Delhi, would like to formally propose a vote of thanks on behalf of the IMPRI Center for Human Dignity and Development and IMPRI Impact and Policy Research Institute, New Delhi. We would also like to express our gratitude to the moderator, Dr. Devender Singh, and panelists for today's session, Professor R B Bhagat, Professor Arun Kumar, Ms. Akriti Bhatia, Mr. Sandeep Chachra, and Professor S. Irudya Rajan for taking out their precious time and adding their diverse perspectives and valuable insights to the deliberation. And of course, we thank all our participants here on Zoom or on Facebook Live for participating and raising their questions. We are grateful if you are watching us later on YouTube or listening us to our various podcasts or reading our publications. I hope that you continue to tune in to future to our IMPRI Web Policy Talk. And thank you once again, and I wish you all a very good evening.